Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving right under the hood of SAP's Accounts Receivable and Accounts Payable systems to uncover how things actually work behind the scenes. If you've ever wondered what's happening in the system architecture the second after you hit post, well, you're in exactly the right place.
We're pulling consultant-level insights straight out of this incredible prep guide. Using it as our roadmap, we're going to bridge that gap between what an end user types on a keyboard and what the system silently executes in the background. It's a genuinely fantastic look at the inner workings of SAP. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to master document splitting, decode advanced payments and special GL, build some custom rules, navigate cross-company codes, and finally tackle the S/4HANA business partner migration. All right, Section 1, Mastering SAP Document Splitting, Passive, Active, and Zero Balance Clearing. To really wrap our heads around document splitting, we have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. When a user posts a 10 grand vendor invoice with multiple expense lines going to entirely different profit centers, how exactly does SAP handle that reconciliation line item? This perfectly illustrates the gap between human and machine. See, an end user just enters a single vendor line item for $10,000, and they usually leave the profit center completely blank. But in the background, SAP's active splitting rules take over. The general ledger actively breaks that single liability down into two distinct lines to perfectly match the individual profit centers tied to those expenses. The whole point of this? It guarantees a perfect zero-balance financial statement can be drawn up at the individual profit center level, meaning you can generate a clean balance sheet and P&L for profit center A and profit center B without doing any of those messy, time-consuming manual allocations at month end. But look, we all know things break in the real world. When you get hit with that dreaded GLT 2002 error, it usually means a passive splitting rule failed, often during an ad hoc posting where the system just can't find a source line item. To fix it, you've got to make sure your inheritance configuration is ticked, or you need to define a default profit center to act as a safety net. Moving on to Section 2, Advanced Payments and Special GL, Rerouting the General Ledger. Here's a classic scenario you'll probably face. A procurement team pays in advance using Special GL Indicator A. Later on, they process the final invoice, but start complaining that SAP isn't auto-notifying them with a warning block that a down payment already exists. Why does that happen? As the consultant, you're fixing this right at the configuration level. You jump into T-code OBYR to map the standard primary vendor account, say 211000, directly to the Special GL Advanced Payment account. But here's the absolute kicker. You have to ensure the down payment/down payment request property is actually selected to trigger that yellow warning pop-up. Okay, but what if the warning works, but they still get an error when they try to clear it? Well, you're almost certainly looking at a field status discrepancy. This happens when a field is set as mandatory in one group, like the field status group, but is totally hidden in the posting keys. The fix is just harmonizing those settings so they don't contradict each other and block the whole clearing process. Let's look at Section 3. Custom validations and rules, enforcing business logic. Say your client demands that all invoices hitting the marketing cost center absolutely must have a text description. You can build a custom validation for that. Using T-code GBB0, you set up a prerequisite looking specifically for that marketing cost center. Then you create a check to verify the text field isn't blank. If it is, boom, the system throws a specific error message, stopping that sloppy data entry dead in its tracks. And speaking of customized logic, keeping a tight grip on your baseline date calculation is huge. This is the exact date your payment terms start counting from. Because if you're booking invoices manually, you have to configure the system to ensure the due date triggers perfectly off the document date or posting date, especially when you don't have an automated goods receipt date to fall back on. All right, Section 4, Cross-Company Code Transactions, Bridging the Intercompany Gap. Now, this is where you really earn your consultant's stripes. Picture centralized procurement paying a $5,000 electric bill. $3,000 is for their own office in company code A, and $2,000 is for a sister facility over in company code B. So what exactly goes down behind the scenes in SAP? To the user, they're just typing in a line item for the sister facility's cost center on a single screen. But under the hood, the system automatically generates two completely distinct accounting documents. Company code 1 credits the vendor and debits its expense and an intercompany receivable. Meanwhile, company code 2 debits its expense and credits an intercompany payable. They're both tied together by a common cross-company code document number to keep the books perfectly balanced.
The secret sauce making all this happen is T-code OBIA. It's the critical configuration bridge mapping those clearing GL accounts between the two corporate entities. If you ever get an error complaining that company codes can't be cleared against each other, it's immediately telling you that the clearing path relationship is missing, right here in OBIA. Finally, Section 5, S/4HANA Business Partner Migration, the new master data paradigm. Guys, this is a massive architectural shift. While the end user sees almost no change on their screen, they're just using newer Fury apps, the consultant knows the ground is completely shifted beneath their feet. The old legacy vendor and customer tables, they're functionally obsolete. Everything now exclusively routes through the centralized business partner model. The engine driving this is CVI, or Customer Vendor Integration, and in S/4HANA, this is completely non-negotiable. It requires incredibly strict configuration to ensure that the business partner ID and the traditional vendor ID match up perfectly during synchronization. The stakes here are just way higher in S/4HANA. If you have even a tiny misalignment in that master data mapping, it's not just a cute little warning on the screen, it literally breaks the Universal Journal's ability to index and post the financial invoice. So that leaves us with one pretty massive, provocative question for your next implementation project. Knowing that absolutely everything now routes through the business partner model, is your legacy master data actually clean enough to survive the jump? Or are you about to migrate a complete disaster right into the Universal Journal? Think about that as you evaluate your own SAP architecture. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer. I hope it gave you a crystal clear look under the hood